Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more.
Welcome to Compass Points, a podcast about Knoxville, Knox County, government, politics, business, education, and just about anything else that strikes our fancy. I am Scott Barker. I'm the editor of Compass, a subscription-based website and newsletter where we report on all these topics and more. And you can find us at CompassKnox.com. Joined today, as frequently, not every week, but frequently, by Jesse Mayshark, who is co-founder of Compass and all-around good guy. Welcome, Jesse. How you doing this week?
I'm doing pretty well. I had a birthday this past week, so happy to say that I'm still here.
Yes, glad you were able to make it around the planet one more time, or around the sun, or whatever it is.
Likewise.
That they say, yeah. So happy birthday. Hope you had a good one. And,
yeah. I went down to Atlanta, saw some rock and roll.
Yeah. Who'd you see?
A band called My Chemical Romance.
I heard it's quite a theatrical show they've been doing now.
Yeah, it was a whole, like...
They clocked in on stage or something like that?
It was this whole, like, they created, like, a whole backstory. They were a band of musicians from some mythological sort of quasi-Soviet Eastern European dictatorship. The dictator was on stage with them, who was constantly sort of threatening them if they didn't perform up to his standards. The lead singer ended up getting stabbed on stage, big pool of blood, and then a suicide bomber set off a bomb. It was a thing. It was a good show.
Well, that disembodied voice that you heard was our producer and owner of this marble and gold palace that we're in, Barbarian Productions, Seth Barber. Seth, how you doing? And it's time for your 3-day-old weather report.
All right, first I need to address that, as you all are aware, I did not go in and fix my prediction. It ended up being 32 points, not the 47 that I promised. I will go ahead and say we beat Mississippi State by 10 to get that out of the way. And then it's a gorgeous day. We had a bunch of rain yesterday, which was perfectly annoying for my daily schedule because the heaviest rain we got was right at drop-off and right at pickup from school. And so my poor kids are out there in the wettest part, and then literally the sun shining before we got home from pickup yesterday. So it was a fun, weird, rainy day yesterday. It's a pretty day so far today. We'll see how this weekend rolls out. It's proper fall now. It comes and goes on a whim.
All right. Well, that it does. So we're going to turn our attention now to all the news that happened last week that we were able to cover. Actually, it's not all the news we were able to cover, but a good selection of it. We're going to be talking about a weird political forum that Compass was a co-sponsor of that happened this week for city council candidates, and we'll tell you why it was weird and tell you all about it. Then also last week, Donde Plowman, the chancellor at the University of Tennessee, gave her flagship address. She does that every year. And it was very upbeat, we'll say that. She did not touch on anything that would remotely put a cloud in the sky over the University of Tennessee. So also Commissioner Larson J., who's running for mayor, had a couple of his items that he's passionate about came up on County Commission last week, and kind of got into it with another commissioner, Kim Frazier, who is also running for Knox County mayor next year. So that was kind of an interesting little back and forth they had briefly, but then we'll also get into the Emerald Youth Foundation, which seems like it's a forever topic now, but last week the city announced that the city and Emerald Youth Foundation have revised the proposed agreement for Emerald Youth to buy a small portion of Chilhowie Park for a youth center, and they hope, I'm sure, to have mollified some of their critics. I don't think they were successful, but they tried, and we'll talk about that, the latest on that. But we're going to start out talking about land use. Another exciting topic for some people, for us definitely. The Knox County government is putting together. They're actually, a consultant of theirs is putting together what's called a Unified Development Ordinance. We know we've talked about this from time to time, but the Unified Development Ordinance will be a huge, hairy, unwieldy beast. All of the kind of development-related laws and regulations of the county are going to be at least reviewed, most of them revised over the course of the next few months. And last week, the consultant, Orion Planning and Design, out of, I believe, Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken, but they were in town, and they met with county commission, they met with the planning commission, they met with committees that had formed to assist them with the technical aspects and all kinds of stuff, and the general public. There were several open house meetings where the general public could go and talk to them and put in their 2 cents. I mean, one thing about this is it is just going to be a massive thing. I mean, I don't think that people quite realize. I didn't even realize how big it was until just recently when I started really looking at it, because the city went through rewrite of its zoning code just 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just the zoning ordinance. And it took a couple of years. There were scores of meetings, a lot of public input, a lot of feedback. This is going to be even more than that, because this is going to be covering zoning. It's going to be covering subdivision regulations. It's going to be covering streets and how they can, how wide they can be and everything else, stormwater issues, all of these things that could possibly affect development moving forward. They're going to be at least be scrutinized, and many of them, based on what the folks from Orion said last week when they were here, many of them will be changed because there are everything is so outdated. That it will just about guaranteed that nothing that's permitted now would be permitted in the exact same way a year from now, and if assuming this gets adopted, which it's a pretty good assumption that especially it's one of those things. The bigger it is, the faster it'll move through, because nobody will understand it. But it's they talked about several instances of kind of how and why these things are out of alignment. Is they're one of their phrases. Misaligned is the one they actually like to use. But even things like there's in the county right now, the RB zone, which is a residential zone, you can have duplexes there, and they can only be a certain height. They got a height limit. But if there's any other building on the property, there's no height restriction at all. And they were kind of like, this is crazy. Why is it? Why do you people do this down here in Knoxville or Knox County? And so they're going to be looking at that, and it's I don't know that there's definitely not nearly as much time as the city used for much less. And I think that's going to be, they're going to come back in the spring and do, kind of present. They didn't really have any details. They said this. They basically said these are their problems. We don't know how we're going to fix them yet.
Right. This is talking about the process, where we're at, and then giving the public some opportunity for input into priorities.
Yeah. And for example, talking about the one of the things that they talked about is in several places in the several zones, there's too much parking allowed and or too much required, and they said that needs to be reduced in these particular areas. Well, how many spaces are we talking about? Walmart losing or whoever it is, but that's the that's the kind of thing that the nitty gritty details we don't know yet that they're going to be developing over the next few months, and they're going to come back in the spring, and there's going to be another week like this, like last week, where they'll come in and give presentations and talk about things and get feedback, and then they'll go back and maybe incorporate things that make sense into the final draft of it, and then Planning Commission and County Commission are going to go ahead and vote on it right then. I mean, it's next year by this time this thing will be done.
Right. That's
at least that's the plan.
Well, and I think that this is one of those things where there's going to be a lot of talk about details. This is really getting into the weeds. But the big picture of it, I think, is going to be what we saw in the recode process in the city, what we saw in the earlier stages, the more big picture stages of this, the county through the Advanced Knox project, where they were kind of laying out the broad parameters of the county's general plan.
Yeah.
But the tension is going to be always between people who want the rules written in a way that allows a greater diversity of development in more places, and people who want to fence in what kinds of development are allowed where. And this is especially going to be true in and around residential areas, because that's always what the fights are about.
Yeah.
And in the more commercial areas, I think the questions will probably have to do with parking, with traffic impact. It's always that balance between residents who are worried about quality of life issues, whether that's impact on their immediate neighborhood or on how many cars are on the road or whatever, and developers who want to build more stuff, more places. County Mayor Glenn Jacobs pretty clearly is more in the latter camp than the former. He's been a pretty pro-development guy all along, especially over the last 5 years, as we really have faced this housing shortage in Knox County. So a major impetus for this whole push that the county's making has been to allow for especially more housing and more forms of housing in more places. And so however detailed the fights get, and they are going to get very detailed, like a lot of these are going to come down to, we want this set at 20 feet versus 30 feet, or we want it set at 5 units versus 12 units or whatever.
Yeah.
But those big picture forces are going to be the things driving it. It's going to be developers and people interested in providing for more housing and development and growth, and neighborhood associations and those kinds of folks.
I think it's worth mentioning, too, that this is going to run smack into the heart of campaign season as far as we're going to discuss a little bit later, the potential mayoral candidates, Mayor and Frazier, as well as the other ones that are already in the running and the whole set that we don't even know who they are yet. Like, this is going to be right in the meat and potatoes of, like, for Jay and Frazier specifically, they're going to be voting on this at commission while they're running on it. On how they feel about it to the community at large. And so it's going to have a huge impact on their campaigns and what they're doing with their campaigns on selling whatever version they want out of this as it comes to time to vote on it.
Yeah. Well, it won't be running. One of them will be running.
You're right. It will be post-primary, but it'll still be part of the primary too.
It'll be part of the primary for sure.
And I know me as I'm better at it than most Knox County residents on when the actual general election is, and I still screwed that one up.
Well, the primary is in May, the county general's in August, but I think even though county commission's not going to have to vote on this before May, it's absolutely true that they will be talking about
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Jay
Yeah.
and Fraser both are very much going to be talking about it.
Well, the tentative date for the next round of public input, when they come back with the draft version of this, is can change, is March.
Right.
So that's before the primaries.
Right. There will be a lot of talk.
So yeah, I mean they can certainly argue when the public appearances before the primaries. So, but the it's going to be one of those things. And again, it'll be a lot of it like Recode as well. A lot of people who are in the general public won't have been paying attention until right before this goes to the Planning Commission, and then after that the County Commission, and they're going to say, "Oh, you're ramming this down our throats." I mean, anybody want to bet me on that? Just send me an email. I'll bet you as much as you want, because that is just the way of the public process world. And you're right. It's going to be details. It's going to be, I don't want the area around where I live to permit up to 12 houses per acre. I want it, our subdivision is 8 per acre. No more crowded than that, and things like, roads and streets and things like that are going to be talked about. It's setbacks. You talked about that. Invariably, the setbacks will not be as great as they are now, and you don't. There are people who don't want a house anywhere close to their house. I'm not one of those. I've got about 10 feet, but
we live in the city. We're comfortable with other people.
That's why, and that is one key thing that people need to keep in mind too, that this unified development ordinance that they are putting together only applies to the unincorporated parts of Knox County. It does not apply to the city of Knoxville. It does not apply to the town of Farragut. The city and the town both have their own zoning ordinances and regulations and all that are separate from the counties altogether. This is truly just the unincorporated parts of Knox County. So,
which is also where the majority of people in Knox County live. Probably 55-ish% live in the areas outside of the city in Farragut. So it does have a lot of impact.
And not only do most of the people live outside, that's where most of the development is going to continue to happen. It's where historically it's been. I mean, the city's grown over the past 15 years, but not nearly as fast as the county has. And if you want to look at 30 years and 40 years, I mean, it's just because there's been a lot of growth, and there has been a lot of growth in the city. They're still not catching up. They're still the tortoise to the county's hare.
Oh, very much. The growth is overwhelmingly happening in the county, and it will continue to, because that's where there's room to grow. I mean, the city's pretty well built out.
Yeah, that's where the land is, and so that was one of the things that was apparent when I went to the county commission meeting where they briefed commissioners about it. They don't have any details yet. I mean, it is seriously just this is the time when you go into the mechanic and he tells you what's wrong with your car. It's not, he hasn't told you what he's going to do to fix it,
or even what your options are.
What your options are, none of that. All he's telling you now is, this is wrong, that's wrong, the other thing's wrong, and there's a lot wrong. So,
and there were these public meetings this past week, but people can still, I think, give input via the advancedknox.org website for like another week or so?
I believe so. I believe it's. I'm wanting to say the 5th without looking at it. I'm wanting to say.
So get it in this week. If you have any input, you want go to advancedknox.org and get it in this week.
Again, it's because it's so big and touches on so many different aspects of development and life in Knox County. It's figuring out what you want to say is at this point is very difficult. I mean, I was wondering, okay, well, if I lived in the county, what would I say right now about what I wanted, and other than what's already been done with the comprehensive land use plan, which is kind of the big picture plan that we talked about that went through Advanced Knox. I mean, that's kind of the big picture thing. You kind of know now that, okay, there are going to be other subdivisions around me, or just down the road is going to be a more commercial development or whatever. Or there's not going to be much at all if I live in certain parts of the county. I can be pretty safe that there's the maximum is going to be two houses per acre, and so it's not going to be, as of now. That could change too. So anyway, we'll obviously be following that when we get a chance. I don't know how much there will be news about this between now and March,
right?
And that's the kind of the thing. It's there is a lot of public engagement, but it's in waves and not not steady.
They're going to take whatever came out of this couple of weeks and go back and do their consultant stuff, crunch it all down.
Those things that consultants do.
Right, exactly.
There's one certainty about what the consultants will be doing: billing.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing. Okay, well, we'll be moving on now to revisit Emerald Youth Foundation.
Speaking of land use.
Yes. But this is city land use. But this is the proposal to sell about 13 acres of a 13-acre portion of Chilhowie Park to Emerald Youth Foundation, a faith-based organization that serves inner-city youth, and they want to build a sports education and ministry complex at this location. This is the former midway of the Tennessee Valley Fair. It's on the south side of Magnolia Avenue, and people are still really confused about this, it seems. It is on the south side of Magnolia Avenue. The most of Chilhowie Park is on the north side of Magnolia. This is a 13-acre appendage on the south side. Anyway, it is the city and Emerald had agreed that Emerald would pay a little over $900,000 for this property. And that is still going to be the case, assuming it passes with City Council. But that's still the proposal. What they did in the face of all of the public and there is public outrage over this in some quarters. The supporters of this will tell you that the supporters are much quieter than the opponents, which is probably true. But the kind of public outcry, they delayed votes at City Council on this to approve this deal twice already. They've had several public meetings over the past few weeks. And the city and Emerald came back. One of the things that this is going to do is double the amount of time that this is going to be in place. I mean, it was originally going to be for 20 years. Now it's 40, which means they have to operate this sports and activities center for at least 40 years.
Right, because one of the concerns that opponents had brought up was, well, once you sell it to them, how do you have any control over what they actually do with the property?
Yeah. So they are contractually obligated to do that. Not only that, but there's going to be a deed restriction put in that it's roughly half the property that fronts Magnolia Avenue. That is where they are going to be, according to their site plan, the draft site plan that they put out. That's where they're going to have 2 soccer fields there, actually multi-use fields. They're going to have infields for baseball and there too, but they're going to be the size of soccer fields, so they're going to have 2 of those. Those will it's be restricted by deed that they would have to stay, recreational. It have recreational use on that part of the property. So and that's in perpetuity. That goes beyond 40 years. That's as long as there's anything there, and the legal system doesn't fall apart. There's that also that the city would still have the right of first refusal on the property if Emerald decided they wanted to sell it. They would have to first offer it to the city for 40 years, over the next 40 years. That's was 20 years, then it'll be 40 years. One other part of this that has been a big concern of opponents has been public access. They are concerned. I mean, right now the property is fenced off. Nobody can just go in there and do anything. And there are a lot of people who are concerned that Emerald would restrict access to the property. This agreement would also include a contractual requirement that they keep it open to the public, that there will be public access, and they have to under the terms of the contract. That goes for 40 years, and they're going to have according to their plan, they're going to have a path across there. People would be able to use the fields there, as long as Emerald activities, kind of scheduled formal activities aren't going on there, like a league soccer match or something like that. There's also going to be a basketball court outdoors there, and there's one field that apparently is going to be kind of not used very often. It's smaller than the soccer fields that I was talking about in the Magnolia frontage. This is back on the Martin Luther King Avenue part back there. There's a smaller field there that will more than likely be pretty much open for just about anybody to use. So that is these are all things that they put in there to try to get people to say, okay, to at least tone down their
like we've heard you. So in looking at this, I think you're right that they are the city and Emerald are trying to respond to concerns that have been raised, but specifically, I think they're trying to respond to a couple of people's concerns. This agreement, to me, the revised agreement, looks like it's crafted to get it past City Council. Because this project, when it first arrived at City Council, although some City Council members said they didn't feel adequately briefed on it and so forth, still, it probably arrived, had there not been community pushback, I think it arrived in a form that a lot of council members would have tended to lean toward approving. The city's already done several projects with Emerald Youth. Emerald Youth is well respected. Then there was all this community pushback, and that shook at least some members of city council who then said they wanted there to be more discussion. This, and you can see this in the responses that there have been online and on social media, this revision is not going to, I don't think it's going to change a single mind of the members of the community who have come forward in opposition to this. Because while they did raise these questions about, well, Emerald could do this and Emerald could do that, when it comes down to it, the real position of the members of the community who are against it is that regardless of the benefits and virtues of the Emerald Plan, that's not what we want here. We want this to be turned into more of a functional, publicly owned city park. That's what we want. And so no matter how much you tweak this Emerald deal, that's not what it is. It just isn't. It's, they can have all the public access they want. There's a fundamental difference between privately owned property and a public park. The kinds of things you can do there, the kinds of programming you can do there, the kinds of, the options that there might be to add amenities and that kind of stuff. So I think what this is aimed at is, can we shore up enough city councils,
5 votes on city council,
people on city council who maybe wanted to support it but have been uneasy because of the pushback? Can we present this in a way that they can say, look, we've tried to address some of the bigger objections, and can we get to 5 votes, maybe 6 votes on council? And so that is obviously, these revisions are kind of positioned as we're listening to the community, but I think the revisions are really there for a couple members of city council to try to get their votes.
Well, they were listening to the community in order to get the votes on city council,
right?
Because quite frankly, most you were correct. Most of the people who are against this, although they'll throw all kinds of stuff against the wall, and they have, but it does come down to should the city sell this piece of property that is part of Chilhowie Park. Even though you can say even though this, even though that, and even those are true, it is still part of Chilhowie Park. They look at it as a park, even though it's technically not a park.
Well, they want it. I think it's people in the community want it to be.
Yes, they
park.
want it to be a park. Yes, I agree with you. But those kinds of distinctions are lost, especially when the name of the place is Chilhowie Park, even though it is a public assembly facility technically. But nonetheless, the big objection is we don't want you to sell this to anyone. Emerald's a fine organization. A lot of them are saying, hey, Emerald's fine. We just don't want you to sell it to anyone. And those people will not be mollified at all by anything short of, Emerald waving a white flag and going off somewhere else. So you're right about that. That is the, as far as the dynamics between the people who are opposed to this and the city administration and Emerald, and obviously, it's getting to the point, and especially by the time this podcast gets dropped on Sunday, really you almost hate to say this because it is, we do have it is a democracy, and there are people that city council's meeting on Tuesday. There will be time for people to speak. The only voices that matter now are the 9 city council members who are going to vote. And you can, if you haven't swayed them by the time the meeting starts, you're not going to sway them.
It's possible, although I will say I have seen city council members make up their minds in the course of a public meeting.
Very rare. Very rare.
I've seen it too. I have seen people change their minds, especially if somebody comes in, feeling sort of like 70% one way, but then the meeting takes certain forms or people say certain things. Like, I mean, I think you're right. Most council members will go in there pretty sure how they're going to vote. But on this one in particular, like, some of that feels a little bit soft.
Well, I think that they're from, I haven't talked to every city council member. I talked to several of them. I think the people who are on the fence can easily go to the no side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are 3 rock solid no's now, and all they need are 2 more people to say no, and it's gone. But they're Amelia Parker, Debbie Helsley, and Seema Singh are all they're firm no's, and Helsley's one that you kind of, and she has said this several times, said it to me, said it to anybody who'll listen. She is one who kind of goes back to the way that this was rolled out as being completely inadequate, and just they need to scrap it and start over again. I think a lot of the other some of the other council members are very much conflicted. I think that they, like you said, it's a proposal that they otherwise probably would have been fine with if there had only been the usual number of people doing the usual number of things. But this is there are people who are very passionate about this, who are really and have been, it's not one of those things where they've been passionate once when I see you and then you don't hear from them again. They're hearing from them every day. So,
and there's probably about 3 council members in play, do you think, in terms of?
There are 3 to 4.
Yeah.
I mean, there are. Gwen McKenzie is a definite yes.
Yeah, who is the district rep.
She is the district rep.
So that's something that will, for some council members who may be uncomfortable with it, the fact that the district rep supports it, I think definitely counts for a lot.
And one of the things that she says is, of course, this piece of property is in the Burlington community, and she says that she's gone door to door over there, talking to people who actually live in Burlington, and about the plans. She said, she was telling me it's kind of sad state of the media and the way people do that a lot of people don't even know this is going on.
Yeah.
And
we call this a huge controversy, and yet it also still only involves sort of a relative minority.
Probably 200 people.
Yeah.
And at the most. Anyway, but they are, once they, first they've heard of it, once they hear about it, they're good with it. They're okay with it. According to McKenzie, that's what they're saying. Tommy Smith, who represents South Knox County or South Knoxville, has said the same thing, and he is a firm yes. Those are the only 2 really firm yeses that I'm confident enough to say on a podcast. I think that Lynn Fugit is someone who I have not talked to. She would be. She is from the nonprofit world. She is probably more conservative than the other council members are. I think that she would be more inclined to be supportive of this, minus the stuff, the
pushback in the process.
Yeah, Andrew Roberto is also someone who would probably be in favor of this if you took that other stuff away. So I mean, they're people who could be. They are council members who could be. Who could go yes, but they also could go no. Lauren Ryder's another. Charlie Thomas, who represents Northwest Knoxville, is in an interesting position. He also could be if someone is on the fence when they go to the meeting, whatever he does could be persuasive as well, because Emerald Youth Foundation has a similar facility in Lonsdale, which is in the middle of his district.
Well, and is also based in the 5th District there on.
Yeah. But and Emerald and the city administration pointed to their facility in Lonsdale as saying, "Hey, this is something that works." They serve had over 1,000 kids last year that did their programs alone. That doesn't include the people who rented the space or came and used it for free, because they do a lot of pro bono hosting, I guess you would call it there. They pointed that as being a very successful model. And Thomas has been very, he's been very. He's kept it. He's not really come out and talked a whole lot about it. I think that he is, from knowing him knew him as you have too, much longer than before he was a council member. I think he is very sensitive to public opinion and to public buy-in on things like this.
Community concerns. I think he takes seriously.
Yeah, very very seriously. But he also, if he looks at the Lonsdale facility and sees that, yes, it is a good, I don't know if he thinks that or not. He might think it's the worst thing in the world, but he looks at it and says it's a positive thing for Lonsdale. It'd be a positive thing for Burlington. That could be, that plus a little bit of lobbying from the mayor's office might help.
That's what I was just going to say, is whichever way they go, all the council members are under, this is not an easy vote. They're under tremendous pressure. They're under tremendous pressure from the community. They're getting emails. They're getting phone calls. They're going to get yelled at at the meeting on Tuesday. They are also under a lot of pressure from the administration, which is pulling out all of its stops to lobby council. And they are under pressure from Emerald Youth, which is a very well-connected and well-respected organization that has some people with an awful lot of clout on their board and in support of them, including the kinds of people who make big contributions to local political campaigns. And so there's I think there is a very intense lobbying campaign going on here from kind of all sides.
Well, the Lonsdale facility, the Emerald Youth facility in Lonsdale, is named after Bill Sansom and Jimmy Haslam.
Yeah.
You don't get cloudier than that.
Yep.
Even though Jimmy basically lives in Cleveland now.
Just having the Haslam name,
in general, because the other Haslams are still here.
Yeah.
All you have to do is drive over to the UT campus, which is where I was yesterday, and actually in a building named for a Haslam. So,
but not the only one.
And not the only one. But anyway, that will be is something these council members are, this is going to drop on Sunday, so they'll have 2 more days to make up their minds if they're not made up yet. But it has all of the indications of being one of these that is going to be very close and could go either way. Depending on whose pressure is stronger, I guess, and not because they're louder or they're more persistent or anything else. It's just who is who does a council member not want to make mad?
Right.
It's not, it's because whoever is on the other side of their vote is going to be mad at them.
Yep.
And most people are people pleasers. These are politicians. They're people pleasers, and they don't like to make people mad. But that is unavoidable.
And ultimately, a council member has to feel okay about their vote. And some of these things eventually come down to a certain gut feeling, which way do I feel better walking away from this?
Yeah.
So we will find out.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple other things that are part of this, what they're doing. It's not really a part of the Emerald proposal. And these are two things that Mayor Kincannon told me that we're going to go forward regardless of what happens with Emerald. And that is a commitment from the city to invest $10 million in the main portion of Chilhowie Park, where Lake Odyssey is and the Jacob Building, and where the fair is now when it's done. But they're talking about investing $10 million over 5 years in that in improvements to that part of the park, the main part of the park, and that is on par with the support for Lakeshore Park in West Knoxville, which a lot of people will point to that as saying, well, the wealthier part of town, and it is smack dab in the middle of the wealthiest parts of the city of Knoxville. That they get all of this, and the park is really nice, and it is really nice. And it also happens to be managed by a nonprofit. But it's really nice, and this is kind of saying, okay, we're going to invest the same amount of money in Chilhowie that we do there. The other thing that they're going to be doing, and this is one of those things where you don't know if it's a mayor being tone deaf or playing 4-dimensional chess. You don't know, but they are going to be creating an East Knoxville advisory group to help guide development in all of East Knoxville, but particularly along the Magnolia Corridor from the stadium area all the way out to Chilhowie Park, and actually a little bit further. And this would be a group similar to the group that was instrumental in developing the South Waterfront Vision Plan and all of that. So it's going to be the as it was explained to me and has been explained to media, that's kind of, and that is something that's going to go, according to the mayor, is going to go through no matter what. I mean, if council defeats the Emerald Youth proposal on a 9-0 vote on Tuesday, this is supposedly going to go through anyway. But those are two things that, while don't directly, obviously those are things that they're putting in hopes of getting votes and maybe mollifying some of the criticisms as well. But unlike the changes to the Emerald contract, it's not going to have a direct bearing on
this property.
This property.
Yeah.
So anyway, so here, this vote's going to come up on Tuesday unless it gets delayed again. Which, if it does, I may scream. But
I don't know. Does anybody really want this to continue?
No, I've talked to several people who are involved, and nobody wants it to continue. Yeah. It's kind of like nobody's going to say anything that hasn't already been said.
Right.
That you're not. Maybe you'll convince somebody. Maybe you won't. I don't know. Yeah, who knows? But basically, everything that's been said has been said. All you're going to be doing is repeating yourself, and I think that goes both ways. The people who are opposed to this, it's while this these changes are new. I think that they would look at it as saying like just more of the same. It's not really new. It's just more of the same stuff. So yeah, let's just go ahead and vote and get it over with. And I do think they will go ahead and vote on Tuesday. And, you can only delay the inevitable for so long. Although, quite frankly, if they delay it another 2 weeks or another month, Emerald might just pull out.
Right, because Emerald has also been working on this for, well over a year.
No, 3 years.
Yeah, and at a certain point, but it's been a year since they were awarded the, designated as the winners of the RFP for the property. So at a certain point, they need to fish or cut bait themselves.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And they have some of those deep-pocketed donors that we were talking about who said, okay, I've given you this money, you need to do something with it. And, they might do something similar. They might do something completely different if they don't get this. I mean, this is from Emerald's point of view, this is great property because it's centrally located to the bulk of the population of East Knoxville, which is south of Magnolia Avenue. It's within walking distance of Austin East Magnet High School, which is where they do a lot of their programs already in East Knoxville. It's big enough to put in soccer fields. There's a dearth of soccer there. I don't think there are any soccer fields in East Knoxville. And Austin East actually, despite that, Austin East won a soccer state championship a few years ago. So, to them, this is a great location. I don't know that there's another one in East Knoxville that would be as suitable. People have talked about property that's on the other side of Magnolia. Well, the problem there is people can't walk there because
it's not as accessible.
It is. You can cross Magnolia on foot, but you wouldn't want to. And I wouldn't want to cross Magnolia on foot most of the time during the day anyway, especially because that's when traffic is heavier. But you certainly probably wouldn't want your 8-year-old to do that. And that's kind of the target audience is the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds into high school. Anyway, so next week at this time, we will probably be telling you about the wailing of the defeated and the cheers of the victorious, but we don't know which side is which yet. So, speaking of confrontations and things that are going on that way in the county, we have Knox County Commissioner Larson J. running for county mayor next year, and he is he's pretty active in the legislative front now. I think trying to get some of the things that he's been talking about, get those done. That I'm sure he would be able to say, "Hey, vote for me because I got this done." Anyway, there are two things really that went on last week that were interesting. One of them is his quest, and I think that's an apt term for this. His quest to bring telecom companies to heel regarding power poles and access.
Right. He's not tilting at windmills. He's tilting at telephone poles.
Telephone poles. It had basically started out as one of the things that is, you've got these power poles and the telecom companies and the utilities and all. Of course, the utility, generally speaking, the utility that runs electricity also owns the pole. Doesn't always have to be that way, but these other companies that attach to the pole have to pay to attach to the pole.
And by that, we're talking about Comcast, Frontier, WOW, all of the various telecoms.
All of those, AT&T, they all have to, if it's a wire and it attaches to that pole and it doesn't belong to the utility itself, they pay money to the utility. Just like you have to pay rent when you live in an apartment. And so what has happened is, and each of those companies has an individual agreement with the utility, and what's happened is when they've gone in and put in new power poles. Sometimes these telecom companies drag their heels about moving the wire from the old pole to the new pole. And while they generally have an agreement with the utility to do it within a certain amount of time, what's the utility going to do?
Right, and the utility is not allowed. So KUB comes in, puts in a new pole, moves their lines over to it. They let the telecoms know, hey, new pole over here, can move your lines. And this is part of what I think Jay has been pushing at. There isn't really any follow-up or enforcement mechanism for that. Yeah. So in a lot of places around the county, you will see there will be a new pole with like 4 lines on it and an old pole right next to it with 1 line on it because that one company hasn't moved it. And until they do that, nobody can remove that old pole.
That is the exact situation on Rock. It's almost at the corner of Broadway and Coker Avenue where I live. And there's a wooden pole right by one of those big, tall, metal poles, and an old wooden pole, little stumpy thing sitting there with a wire on it. So I don't know which company it is, but and before Larson, I probably wouldn't have paid
any attention
to it at all. Anyway, one of the things that they're now he wants the county to be able to go in and punish them essentially. His latest permutation of this is to withhold new permits because the county doesn't have anything to do with the money and they can't force these companies to move, but they do issue permits for new lines. And
because all of this is in public right of way.
It is in the public right of way. These are in easements that are owned by the county or the city, depending on the jurisdiction. But what he's kind of wanting to do is, okay, if you don't move your power line in Powell, we're not going to give you new permits in Hardin Valley. You just can't get any new ones. So if you want new business in Knox County, you have to take care of the old mess is what he would call it. It generated quite a bit of discussion in their agenda review meeting. He wasn't at the agenda review meeting because one of his colleagues, Courtney Durrett, she works for Comcast. Yeah. It was kind of interesting watching her try to kind of not cross the line into advocating for her employer. She did give them some information about how things work, but she even admitted herself, in the meeting that I'm trying not to cross the line here. But these legal concerns came up, and so they were so Jay was going to postpone that, but he said these are actually 2 different resolutions. He was already going to postpone one, and then he decided to postpone the second one. It was kind of interesting. He showed an example, and it's a stark example. Is that big Belltown development up in just west of Clinton Highway on West Emory Road. This is a development the size of a small town. It is huge, or going to be huge, but they're widening the road, West Emory Road, in anticipation of people moving in there and living there and everything else. And they have new KUB is the electricity provider up there. They came in and put in these big, modern steel poles. I assume it's steel, but metal poles down the south side. I believe it's the south side of Emory. On the other side of the road, there is a string of single poles old wooden poles that are short with one line on it, and that line belongs to Frontier. And
that's the area where they want to widen the road.
They've got everything done around these poles. I mean, these poles are just sticking up in the middle of the road project area, and the contractor can't do anymore. They've done all they can do. They can't do anymore. So, and as most people know, if you're not working, you're costing you're costing the county money if they're not able to keep working. And the county has, according to Jim Snowden, who's the engineering director of the county, they've tried every way possible to get in touch with the company, and the company's ghosted them essentially. They're not
a familiar experience to anybody who has ever tried to contact a commercial telecommunications provider. What, you couldn't reach a human operator? Really?
They're doing this that part of the business through their customer service department now. But anyway, they've been completely ghosted according to the county for a couple of months. And Frontier's a big company. One interesting thing that I found out when I was looking at this, because I'm not real familiar with Frontier, knew the name, that was about it. They're actually being purchased by Verizon right now. So that the merger or the acquisition has been approved, has had regulatory approval. It's just not going to close until after the first of the year. I don't know if that has anything to do with this. Maybe not. Who knows? Who knows the ways of the corporate world, and especially the telecom corporate world. During all of this, Andy Fox, county commissioner, who's also an attorney, said, "Why don't we just amend this thing and just go after Frontier? Just forget going after all telecoms. Let's just go after Frontier." Well, Deputy Law Director Mike Moyer said, "Oh, there might be a little problem with that," but he came up with a solution that nobody had come up with for some reason, because most of them aren't lawyers, although there are a couple of lawyers on the commission. He said, "Well, I'll just sue them. Just file a lawsuit." Said, "I've got to have somebody to tell me to file a lawsuit, but I can file a lawsuit." And he said, "I do. We do it all the time. This is how you get companies who don't want to do things. And so if somebody will tell me to file a lawsuit, I will." They immediately turn Rhonda Lee, who is an attorney also, but she immediately turns to Jim Snowden and say, "Well, can you tell him to sue?" And basically, Jim said, "Well, I'll get my boss to check." So he was going to check with Glenn Jacobs to see if they want to go through with it. So nothing's been filed yet, but it does take more than a couple of days to draft.
It also may be the kind of thing where just getting that initial letter from the county law department would be enough to get Frontier to say, "Okay, I guess we need to actually do this."
Yeah, we need to actually.
You don't know what that lever is going to be.
And one of the things about them dragging their heels is to go out and do this where they've got to move. It's not just one pole. I mean, it's the whole line of poles. It costs money to these telecom companies to go move those lines, and it's not something that they have a revenue, to specifically to cover that. So it basically comes, out of the profits, and so there's no real incentive for them to do it quickly, especially when the only thing that can really happen to them now is the utility could sue them to make them move it, possibly. Depending on what their agreement states. And so, I mean, and utilities really haven't done that. So anyway, that has been going on. Then we had another kind of pet project of his. Kim Frazier, the county commissioner, at-large commissioner, she's from Hardin Valley, and she is running for mayor as well, has proposed relaxing some of the eligibility requirements for the Knox County Sheriff's Office Merit Board. Currently, there are several restrictions on being a member of that board. One of them is you can't have worked for the Knoxville Police Department in recent years, and that's going to go by the wayside because everybody thinks that's kind of silly. Even though a lot of people will go from the sheriff's office to the police department, then retire and get appointed to this. But currently, if you are a sheriff's office employee, you retire, and somebody thinks you'd be good for the merit board, they can't appoint you to the position on the merit board for 10 years. You got to wait 10 years to serve on the merit board. The argument that Frazier makes is that's way too long. There are people we can use their expertise on this board. Let's cut it to 5 years. Jay is adamantly opposed to that. They did reform these eligibility requirements a few years ago. He was involved in that. He thinks that this is a good these restrictions are good ways to keep politics out of the sheriff's office. Well, to the extent possible. Right. Sheriff's offices are notoriously political, but it would in the whole idea of this merit board is it protects employees from being discriminated against because they didn't support the sheriff or supported the sheriff's opponents or whatever political reasons there are. And the less the more distance there is between a person appointed to this board and the sitting sheriff, the better, according to Jay. That's kind of the thing there. He is, obviously opposed to Frazier's proposal. There was a little bit of there was talk about compromising and going to 8 years, and that could have worked, but he wanted to delay implementation for a longer time. Anyway, they did a lot of that wrangling that nobody really cares about except us and them. But then Jay throws out that that this proposal from Frazier is all political because her husband, who is a physician, is the campaign treasurer for Brent Gibson, who is running for sheriff. And so the obvious implication is that she's wanting to loosen up the regulations just in time, if Gibson won, just in time for him to stack the deck or whatever it is, whatever nefarious thing he might be doing with the merit board. Jay didn't call her out by name. He just said the sponsor, and the sponsor, of course, was Frazier. She hit back that was insulted that was the case. That he would make that accusation. That other people had said. Again, one of these kind of veiled things that she implied that people have come to her with complaints that Jay has been less than forthcoming in public meetings about certain topics. So it wasn't an extended battle royal there. That they didn't carry on for a long time, but both were kind of pointed in what they said, and definitely they were upset with one another, and
maybe a little hint of what we might see more of in the coming months as those campaigns ramp up.
We definitely might see something like that going forward. The right now there are 3 candidates for the Republican nomination. They are obviously two of them. There's no Democrat running yet, and the other is Betsy Henderson, who until recently was the chair of the school board. She's still a member, but she's with the school board. She has kind of painted herself as the most conservative member, and she probably is the most conservative member of the three, and kind of obviously they're two wanting to split the more moderate vote between those two, and giving her a little bit of an easier path to winning in the primary. That of course, there's a long way to go before the primary, but it's going to be at least at the early stages. Jay and Frazier are more than willing to go at each other on this.
Well, and some of the jockeying there could also have to do with who they are hoping to get support from when it comes to people in the sheriff's office, because the sheriff's office employs a little over 1,000 people, many of whom do live in Knox County and would be voters. And I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that sheriff's office employees have a fairly high voter participation rate. And those can also be, good blocks of campaign volunteers and so forth. And so I don't know how particularly this issue of people being able to serve after 5 or 10 years shakes out within the politics of people in the sheriff's office. But that is certainly something that all of the candidates are keeping an eye on too.
Well, of course, the theory is if it's a 10-year restriction, then after 10 years, the sheriff that you worked for is no longer the sheriff because of term limits. So, that's kind of the theory behind it. When they were compromising to 8, they were saying kind of the same thing, and if you're retiring the day that the new sheriff takes office, you're not going to be beholden to him for your job. So 8 years would be an okay time limit, but 5, according to Jay, would be a little too convenient for whoever was the sheriff. And those are you talk about people that get pressured. And those are sheriff's deputies, as far as the politics goes. It doesn't have to be overt pressure, but there is, I am sure, a kind of an unstated pressure to vote for the boss when the boss is up. And, of course, we've got, like 4 people who are running now who are, we've got one former sheriff and others who served in the sheriff's office or are currently serving in the sheriff's office. And so there are all kinds of allegiances in the sheriff's department that are going to be, the sheriff's office that are going to be tested in the coming weeks. So they might have some sympathy for those city council members now that are getting pressured. So, anyway, from there, we're going to shift over to the University of Tennessee, where on Thursday of last week, Chancellor Dondi Plowman gave what she calls the flagship address. That is her annual, for lack of a better phrase, state of the campus address, where she talks about all the good things that are going on at UT Knoxville, and she did exactly that. She's a pretty optimistic, enthusiastic person to begin with, and she had all kinds of things that she pointed out as making UT just great, poised to move to the next level, which is a cliche that she is making more cliched every time she speaks in public. It seems she really likes using that phrase. She used it several times during her speech on Thursday, and she points to a lot. There are a lot of kind of things that UT can point to say these are really good things. They're almost obsessed with enrollment, and while more students doesn't necessarily mean a better school, they are getting the students they do have, which are they have record enrollment now. They are staying at UT longer. The first year retention rate is I think 94%, something like that. It's at record levels, and the graduation rates are rising, and those rates do matter. It doesn't really matter so much whether you have 30,000 students or 35,000 students or 40,000 students, as much as what's the proportion that are graduating, and that's going up. That's a good thing. She pointed to several other initiatives, the Maplehurst research area that the UT is getting control of now in the Maplehurst neighborhood in North Knoxville, where they're going to that's going to be AI Central at UT. But there are various other things. There's a lot of construction going on, a lot of new buildings, both academic buildings. They had 3 residence halls that opened up this year, and they're going to be building more. They just bought or voted to buy a piece of property that's at the edge of campus, where they're going to expand. I guess the house that's on there is going to end up being a fraternity house of some sort, because they talked about it being for Greek life. But there are big things going on. One of the things that was kind of interesting, like I said, she's very positive, and she really accentuated the positive too. That was her thing. Just positive thing after positive thing after positive thing. And one of the things that she pointed out was that for the second time, 91% of students at UT have reported in surveys saying that they feel safe and comfortable expressing their opinions, and that's a pretty good. That's 91% is, you're always going to have some people who might be afraid to speak out on whatever they want to speak out on, but for whatever reason. And one thing that she didn't mention, possibly because it was really hard to make it positive and uplifting, was that she is also in the last 2 weeks made the decision to begin the process of firing a professor for exercising her free speech rights online, by saying some pretty mean things about Charlie Kirk. And she is one of the professors across the country have been disciplined or fired for doing that, as many people in other professions too. But she did was critical of Charlie Kirk in apparently a friend's Facebook feed.
Yeah, I think it was a comment on somebody else's Facebook post that then probably somebody took a picture of and sent to somebody, the way these things go.
The way these go, and it got to a very conservative influencer,
Robbie Starbuck,
yeah. And so anyway, it got the word got around.
Yeah, it got to Robbie Starbuck, then to Marsha Blackburn, and then everybody in the state was telling the university, "You got to fire this professor."
Well, and they did, or they started to, and they still may. But
right, I think it's formally under.
Yeah, there's
investigation. There's a whole process.
There's a process that they have to go through to actually terminate a professor. So they are going through that process. It was interesting. Like I said, she didn't mention it. There was a media availability afterwards, And I had known the faculty senate had a meeting on Monday, that she attended, and they let her have it about that. They were very much opposed to someone being disciplined for exercising their First Amendment rights,
personal expression,
and personal expression on a not in a professional. I mean, it wasn't It wasn't like she said this in class.
Right.
It wasn't like she sent it in an email blast to colleagues or to students or anything else. This was apparently just something that she shared with someone else, and but the faculty members registered their displeasure. So I was at this media availability after this is over with and noticed that she actually mentioned twice that 91% of the students were, comfortable expressing their opinions. So I was going to ask, and they'd already told us that she wasn't going to answer questions about, she's not going to answer questions about the disciplinary action. It's like, well, and I just looked at him and said, I'm going to ask one. And so I did. I said, you say 91% of the students, what about the faculty? And I knew she'd been at the seminar, but what have they told you? What have you heard from them? Knowing that there's often a disconnect between what someone says and what someone hears. There was an official who kind of spoke up and said, she's not going to answer that question. And I just looked at him and I said, well, I'm asking it, sorry, but she didn't answer. She, no one is required to answer the questions of a journalist legally. But she just said, 91%, a couple of times, last couple of surveys, 91% of students, and I'm not going to talk about the faculty. And, I guess, I don't know if it was because she didn't want to talk about it at all and figured that might be opening the door for me or for other journalists there to ask more questions, or she wanted to just avoid talking about it altogether.
Well, there's always the possibility of litigation in these kined of cases. And so
absolutely.
I'm sure university attorneys are like, just don't say anything.
Just don't say anything. Yeah. In fact, mentioned our report on this, on the flagship address and her, the media briefing afterwards, a professor at South Dakota State University, had been fired for a similar expression of
disdain for Charlie Kirk,
contempt for Charlie Kirk, and had been fired, and immediately turned around and sued, and a federal judge said, hey, South Dakota State, you have to reinstate this person now. You can go through, we can go through the process and everything else, but at least temporarily, this person needs to be reinstated. And
because and I think this is something people got sort of confused about in hearing all of the stories about people being fired for things they had said after Kirk's killing. People who work in the private sector have functionally no First Amendment protections when it comes to your employment. Your boss in the private sector absolutely can fire you for things you say at work. They can fire you for stuff you say on your Facebook page. They can fire you just because...
they can fire you for what you say to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So there are no First Amendment protections there. But in the public sector, it's different. If you are a public employee, you are, in fact, an employee of the government. People who work at the University of Tennessee are employees of the state of Tennessee. The state does not have or has much more restricted abilities to penalize its employees for their public speech, especially if it's about a matter of public interest, which certainly the death of Charlie Kirk was a matter of public interest, and especially if it's not said in the course of their professional conduct as part of their job, if it's not said on behalf of the institution, if it's just a private individual who works for the state expressing their private opinion, then the state firing them for that, courts have consistently ruled, is a form of censorship and often will run afoul of the First Amendment, as happened in the South Dakota case. I'm sure UT administrators and lawyers are all very well aware of this, and so we'll see how that affects the actual outcome of this.
Yeah, especially, and I'm sure that the UT professor who is being disciplined, and others are paying real close attention to what's going on in South Dakota State too.
Yeah,
because if that professor prevails, and it's still, he was just reinstated until
got essentially a temporary injunction against the firing.
Yeah, while the case plays out in court. But that there are dozens and dozens of professors across the country who are paying close attention and going, because they got another 51 weeks before the statute of limitations would run out,
right.
So they've got plenty of time to watch what's going on. So,
and there are other cases like this in Tennessee. There's some at ETSU, one at MTSU, one at Austin P.
Yeah.
Those are all state schools, and so they would all be subject to the same First Amendment issues. Obviously that's something that we'll be on the lookout for anything that comes out from UT on that. The last thing that happened last week that we're going to talk about on this episode is something that we were actually involved in, and that is we had a game show style candidate forum for city council candidates that we sponsored along with Inside of Knoxville and Leslie Bateman, the new editor and publisher of that fine publication. It was her brainchild. She did most of the work, but we tagged along and cheered her on, and it was kind of a fun event. It was set up in these, and we talked about this last week a little bit, set up in the style of of game shows. We had a wheel of issues instead of a wheel of fortune. They had a kind of a Jeopardy round using, asking them to answer questions about the city budget, and some other playful things. They had to eat hot chicken before giving a Was there a vegetarian option? I always ask as somebody who doesn't eat meat.
Ask that, and it appered that there were no vegetarians.
Right. Maybe it wasn't an issue for any of these candidates. Just curious.
If that, first of all, they knew that was going to happen. I mean, they didn't know questions, but they knew that they were going to have to eat hot chicken and say stuff. And actually, they were allowed to say anything because it was their kind of a 90-second stump speech is what they were allowed to give, and so yeah, I mean they and they were hot wings. They were hot. We had Nathan Honeycutt, who's running in the 2nd district, started just coughing in the middle of his talk, and they almost all of them said something about how hot the chicken was. I did not sample the chicken, but I took their word for it that it was hot. Anyway, so there were all these kind of fun things that they could do. It was, kind of the idea behind it was to have a little fun with politics, and things like candidate forums are usually very somber and very serious affairs because running for office and governing is a very somber and serious thing to do. But I think the idea was that don't take yourself too seriously, and it did give people the chance to see these candidates. Or 7 of the 10 candidates who were running were there. Kind of let their hair down a little bit, have some fun. There was no, there was no stress on them to to answer everything correctly or anything. There wasn't,
and there were no winners declared.
There were no winners or anything like that. In fact, one of the things was they in the kind of Jeopardy round, and that was asking them things like, what's the size of the net budget of the city? What is the percentage pay increase that all city employees get by ordinance every year? 2.5%. Anyway, the ask all these questions. One of the questions that was asked was, how much money is the city required by ordinance to spend on affordable housing? And on these other questions, somebody, one or two people, some up to four in cases, got it right. I mean, there were a couple of people who got the size of the budget right to the $1 million point. There was some small change that you could quibble about, but when it came to the requirement on affordable housing, not one person got it right, and they were all actually over. They all actually had gone over. This is kind of I'm sorry, I said Jeopardy. I meant Price is Right. Where
and the answer is $5 million. Right?
The answer is $5 million. There were guesses like $8 million to $10 million and all, and which a lot of times ends up getting done. I mean, the actual amount spent this year, or is supposed to be spent this year, is about $8 million, but they're only required to do $5 million. So anyway, it was one of these things where there was some serious policy stuff talked about in a very unserious way, and it seemed to be a lot of fun. We had a great turnout. There were about 120 people or more. There were actually more than 120. I stopped counting at 120 at the Kearns Food Hall in South Knoxville.
So I have a second important question: is what was your guesstimate of the median age of the room?
Well, I tell you what, it dropped considerably because there were people who brought their young children.
Fair enough.
In fact, 2 young children. There was one segment where someone from the audience would come and ask a question, and then there was a top hat up there, and the council candidate would have to reach in and pull out, or I can't remember if the council, anyway, pull out a card with a word written on it, and they would have to answer the audience member's question using the word.
That's fun.
Like armadillo.
We had an armadillo thing on like the first or second episode we ever did here.
Yeah, but these were just random words that did, and we did have a couple of youngsters who came up and asked very good questions. We also had a former mayor, Madeline Rogero, came up and asked them a question. Well, actually, she asked a really good one. She basically asked them, how would you approach an issue like Chilhowie Park? Because she said, how would you approach an issue that were competing interests, and they're very controversial. Anyway, the one thing about this too is it was kind of interesting and really unusual for somebody who covers these kinds of things every year, is that in a regular forum, you ask a question and all of the candidates answer that question.
Right.
In this, that wasn't the case. They went up there. They did the Wheel of Fortune thing. When they spun the wheel, it landed on a topic. They talked about that topic, and nobody else did. You spun it, and the next person would spin it and land on something else, and they would talk about that. So there wasn't a comparative thing. So that was a little unusual, but they did cover a lot more topics than you might be able to get in otherwise. And the one topic they didn't get to on the Wheel of Fortune kind of thing was kudzu. That was kind of thrown as a wild card. They have to talk about their position on kudzu, and but it didn't come up because it's a Wheel of Fortune, not a Wheel of Certainty. So
then my last question on it is: was it cake?
It was not.
Okay.
So they did do a round of that. It was there was an object that could have been a basketball, could have been a cake that looked like a basketball, as a nod to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, by the way. And but it was not cake. But anyway, but it was a lot of fun. The candidates all got in the spirit of it. They were all good sports about it. They had to. I wouldn't say model swimsuits, but they had to select swimsuits and carry them in front of themselves and explain how the swimsuit that they selected reflected their priorities or personalities or whatever. And they did and they just ran with it. And they did a good job, and it was a lot of fun. The people that were there, like I said, there were, 120 people is a pretty good turnout for a political forum.
Well, that's why I asked the median age question, because the handful that I ever go to, it tends to be very low turnout and very advanced age.
Well, there were
average.
There were some people who were in my age group. Yeah, there were lots who were younger.
Well, I'd say the couple of forums I've been to, you would have been young for the room.
No, I'm not anymore. I hate to say it, but not anymore. But the crowd was good.
Let me ask the question this way: did you feel like an old man in that room?
No.
Do you ever not feel like an old man, Scott?
Yeah, pretty much all. That's pretty much a daily.
I'm just trying to
thing.
get excited about younger people showing up for a forum.
Well, they did.
That is not traditionally what happens with forums, and I think that's what's really neat about this one.
They did, and we tried to. We had MCs instead of. I mean, we called them moderators, but they're MCs instead of. A traditional moderator. Jesse and I have both been traditional moderators, and they were much more entertaining than we would be. Monica Miller she kind of dressed kind of a small dolly, had big wig. She in a big long purple or pink gown, and
was she wearing an emergency blanket too for a period?
She was, she had something wrapped around her.
Okay.
It wasn't an emergency blanket.
I watched some of the videos. I haven't watched the whole thing.
Yeah, and then it was just a lot of fun. There was a lot of audience participation. Audience did seem to enjoy it. A lot of the feedback we got was, that was a lot of fun, and that was good. I mean, one other thing that this is just not. It was almost I won't want to say anti-forum, but it was very, very different. We allowed them to bring their campaign signs. In fact, they each sat with a campaign sign in front of them on the stage. I mean, you can't do that in most forums. You don't have anything like that, but it was allowed. It wasn't abused. It was kind of interesting. We had like other forums, we had a timekeeper. If you want to call Catherine Bach, the school board member, a celebrity timekeeper, we had a celebrity timekeeper, and it was kind of fun because what it was whenever it came to, someone was coming up to the line on their time limit. She had these rubber chickens, little rubber chickens that she would swing around, and and she was strict too. Once 90 seconds hit, she hurled it up on the stage, and usually just on the floor of the stage. But it was enough to get your attention, and you paid, and they stood up. Although at one point, she did take the rubber chicken and hurl it on the stage, and she just nailed Jeff Tallman, the 4th District, one of the 4th District, nailed him right in the chest. Boy, he just kind of looked like, oh my God, what happened? Obviously she didn't intend to do that, but it was, it was one of those funny moments, and there were a lot of good kind of funny moments like that. It was something different.
In a city council race somehow seems, for one thing, it's nonpartisan. It seems maybe more amenable to. I'm trying to imagine doing this with like the 4 sheriff candidates next year, and I'm really not sure how much participation you'd get.
Yeah. If I think I said this earlier. Leslie Bateman at Inside of Knoxville. It was her idea, and she came to me and said, "Well, you want to join me with it?" I kind of like, I don't know. And she said, well, you don't have to do anything. Just, or not much. She did.
We like those proposals.
I said, well, okay, this is publicity for Compass, and I don't have to do anything, sure. But it was actually a lot of fun, and
big credit to Leslie. Good idea.
Absolutely. But yeah, if she suggests doing it for the sheriff's race next year, I'll say, I might want to
maybe not this one.
Might want to reconsider that one, because it doesn't translate. The city thing was good, and although talk about if we want to slip a little partisanship into it. As I said, there were 7 candidates who were there. The 3 candidates who were not there are all managed. Their campaigns are being managed by Eric Weider, who is a Republican political consultant.
Yep. Very conservative.
Very conservative. His candidates rarely go to any other forums, so I wasn't
His
surprised.
Candidates pretty much only go to Republican Party forums.
And so I don't know. I know one of the candidates said that they would be meeting with voters that night and couldn't attend. I don't know what the other 2 said, if they said anything, because
it's all part of the trend that we've seen for years. Of in general, Republican candidates don't like going to forums. Weider's candidates in particular, very resistant to such things.
And the sad thing about that is, I think, is that of all the forums you could go to, it was absolutely the least partisan thing in the world, because there were, you could make partisan answers if you wanted to. Jeff Tallman's a conservative, and he and Eric's worked on his campaign, but not he's not the manager, but he's consulted with Tallman, and Tallman. He gave some conservative answers, which you would expect from someone who's a conservative person, but he was there and he had fun, and he even picked out a swimsuit. He picked out a woman's swimsuit because it looked like you could rationalize it by saying it was a wrestling outfit. But,
sure.
But anyway, it was kind of fun. But like I said, he got into it as well. Everybody did. It was a fun kind of humanizing moment, and now they can go back to being regular old politicians and yelling at each other or whatever they do. They don't do that, but they can go back and do that. But at least for one evening, there was kind of a fun political night.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, that's all the news that we can cover from last week. This week, we've got a couple of things coming up. The Board of Education is meeting on having a work session on Monday and a voting meeting on Friday. Those will be at 5:00 at Summer Place.
Thursday, isn't it? The voting meeting's Thursday. Usually it's. I didn't look at this month's schedule, but they typically meet on Thursdays.
Excuse me. Yes, it is Thursday.
Even school board members don't want to go to school board meetings on Fridays.
Nobody does. No. I just was speaking without my brain working. It'll be on Thursday. It'll be 5:00 both days at the Summer Place boardroom. There's not a whole lot of stuff that I saw on the agenda that would be controversial. There are a bunch of policy adjustments.
The one thing that I noticed at a quick glance is, which is not so much specific to what they're going to be voting on, but it could generate some discussion. They're revising their policy on providing educational services to gifted and talented students, and mostly what they're doing is rewording some sections of that and kind of making more specific what levels of services are to be provided. But that is an area that there's been a lot of criticism of the school system for several years now, that when it comes to, because gifted and talented, as they call it, programming is actually part of special education. When you talk about special education, people think about people with learning disabilities and other kinds of challenges who need extra services, but gifted and talented students are also classified as students in need of special education services. And Knox County has, for quite a while now, been criticized by parents of those students for not really providing a whole lot. And actually, if you look at the policy, the way it's laid out, by the time you get to high school, it's like, and gifted and talented students in high school can take AP classes. Like basically, there isn't really anything extra that they're promising or providing. So that's something that I could see there being some discussion of, like, are there other things they should be doing?
One thing on that topic was just, earlier a couple of months ago, they had a lot of they had funding that they anticipated getting that they did not get, and they said they would be changing the talented and gifted.
Yeah, they moved some teachers out of that.
Yeah, they moved teachers out of that, and the essential thing is there are talented and gifted students who are special ed, and they still are supposed to get special ed stuff. There are also talented and gifted students who are not in special ed, but they have been getting supplemental attention. Probably, obviously their parents don't think so enough, but they had. That was the thing. And what they had said the solution was going to be was, okay, we're not going to be able to do that anymore because we're having to take the people out and plug holes in other places. And they were just going to rely on the classroom teacher to give them the curriculum on steroids, I guess, that you get as a talented and gifted student in Knox County schools. But anyway, I would imagine that this will be very, kind of tweaking that to make sure that it's in line with what is actually happening in the schools now. So then we are also, as we said, there will be a city council meeting on Tuesday at 6 at the main assembly room of the city county building. They will be voting on the Chilhowee Park thing. They will not be voting on the only other thing that will generate discussion is second reading of an ordinance to reduce the amount of time that people can speak at public forum from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. That was, as you might recall, prompted. A lot of several council members expressed disappointment or not outrage, but they were, they didn't like it, which prompted Lynn Fugate, who chairs the committee that came up with it, to chastise them for not bringing it up to the committee that came up with them before it came to council for a vote. So that was. I'd never actually seen Lynn chastise anyone, and she did.
And it'll be an interesting meeting to have that discussion because there's probably going to be a lot of public forum at Tuesday's meeting.
I mean, one of the big questions that you'll have. I mean, I almost always check to see the number of people who are going to sign up to speak for various topics because I like to kind of predict when I might be able to leave and go back and write stories from it. But I would imagine there will be a bunch, more than allowed, who want to speak on this. And the question is going to be, well, will the council suspend the rules and allow everyone to speak, or will they stick to their rules and only have 3 to speak on each side? As we mentioned earlier, everything's been said about Chilhowee Park that can be said. So I kind of hope that they,
there are going to be people showing up wanting to say those things again.
Yes. So one would think that since they had been said before, then at least 3 people would be able to say them again. That for the sake of reducing redundancy, they could limit it to 3 and then have. Everybody else wave or stand up or whatever they want to do to bring attention that they are opposed as well. Will that happen? Nah. A boy can dream. A reporter can dream, and it's not that I want to limit.
I would think
it's not that I want to limit public discussion. It's just that there has been a lot of feedback already given, and it's one of those things that's kind of weird because there will be. Probably as many as 20 or 30 people who would want to speak, which puts
Well, and council members who are looking at potentially making a vote that's going to displease people in one direction or another will probably then, because of that, want to lean toward allowing people to at least speak.
Oh, I know. The maybe they want the people that they're going to make mad. They want to make them really, really tired so they can make their getaway.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, whatever happens at the next city council meeting, we will be there to bring that to you. Once again, this is Compass Points, a podcast of CompassKnox.com. I'm Scott Barker, Jesse Mayshark. Thanks, Jesse, for being here. Seth, thank you for your engineering prowess. And thanks to Will Wright, who is not with us in person, but his music is much appreciated. We will be back next week to talk about the Chilhowie vote, we hope, and other things as they come up.
CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.